Hi, I'm Case Lowe, co-host of the Open the Voice Gate podcast. The one question I'm constantly asked when it comes to Dragon Gate is, how do I get into the promotion? Well, stop asking and start listening to the Open the Voice Gate podcast, released every Wednesday on the Voices of Wrestling podcasting network. For exclusive news and show reviews, look no further than the leader in Dragon Gate coverage, Open the Voice Gate.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling podcasting network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Hey there, Thunder Buddies and Travelers down Thunder Road. It's us, Days of Thunder, the WCW Thunder rewatch podcast that you didn't ask for, but we did anyway, coming to as part of the Voices of Wrestling podcast network and powered by largemanapears.com. I am your festive host, your hastily rewritten pay-per-view on Thunder Road, Dave Ryan. And I'm joined, as I am every week, by my faithful co-host. He's Stagger Lee Malone. Lee, it feels like it's been a dog's age since we spoke to each other.
It's definitely been at least a dog's year.
Yeah, it certainly has.
Yeah, no, it's been a while, as that band famously once said. But
it's been a while.
Yeah. So it's Christmas now. I mean, it feels like it was Halloween last time we spoke. So
honestly, we started this idea of banking the regular shows, so that when I have my absence next year, when my child is born, we would have a couple of months of stuff in the canister just in case I don't have time to record. And we fairly ate through that because of our schedules, as I alluded to on Twitter this week.
It turns out the run up to Christmas is incredibly busy for you and your work, and me and my work, and who would have thought?
Yeah. And also we had, I can't remember if you were sick, but I had my annual dose of something.
You did.
And sadly, it wasn't the kind of, like, if it was just I've done podcasts with, like, a flu before, and that's fine, but it was a head cold, which specifically affected my voice. I was completely stuffed up, and my throat was kind of, like, scratchy. So talking at length wasn't a thing I was capable of doing, which I think we had at least 2 shows planned for the week I was sick, and that was just not a thing that ended up happening.
Yeah. Look, come here. It's fine. We're here now. We have a hell of a pay-per-view.
Oh, God. Significant, you could say. It would be a word.
Yeah, I think it's definitely significant, but it's also a hell of a show for many good and bad ways. But, it just seems like it's taken us forever to get here, but boy, is it a big one.
There is plenty to talk about, that is for sure. But first, I kind of wanted to celebrate the fact that we're kind of like officially on the Christmas wind down.
We are.
In personal life. Do you have like a particular thing that happens in work or period of time where after that the mental go slow starts? Because I had my last day of standard groups last Thursday, and since then my output has been in precipitous decline.
No, I mean, we've talked about this over the years. In my previous work, I worked all through Christmas, and it was an incredibly busy period. Whereas now my current job, this is the first job I've ever had where I have a Christmas shutdown.
Yes.
So I finish work on the 20th of December, and I do not return until the 2nd.
Hell yeah. That's only a few days short of how much I'm getting. So you're delighted, I'd say.
Oh yeah, and it's a total fuck up by one of my bosses because they insisted that I take 2 days, or when I started that I keep 2 days holidays for the 23rd and 24th, and it turns out I wasn't supposed to, but now they've been given, so there's fuck all they can do about it.
This is an incredibly boring, tedious thing, but I really wish employers, I hate employers that do the thing of like, you have to keep X amount of holiday days for Christmas, when it's like, well, we all know everyone's going to be taking the holidays off because everything is closed. So why don't you just take those days off me at the start of the year so that I don't have to do this, okay, I need to subtract this many days from what it says on my system I have left. It just seems really counterintuitive.
So instead of saying you have 20 holiday days this year, you have 18.
Yeah, it seems like what it is head office, just somebody doesn't want to do the counting until they're in the back half of the year. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, what day does Christmas fall on this year? But yeah, I've been kind of like, we've done a couple of trips the last couple of weeks. They've been hard hours, like, you know, there's been a few post 11 o'clock returns home, which is tough when you've been out since like 10 in the morning. But now I'm firmly on the go slow. Like there's nothing that requires planning left, and my traditional thing with my staff, since I became a manager in my work, is like, right, okay, the last day we have no one in, no service users whatsoever, and we just clean the place top to bottom in the morning, and then we go to the pub on work time.
It's a good plan.
Yeah, I think it's a nice way, because like where I had worked within the place I work previously had been, okay, we're 100 miles an hour right up until the last day, and then we're also trying to do work things and clean the place on the last day, so everyone finishes frazzled, whereas I just wanted like a gentle climb down into the holidays.
And also a pint.
And also a couple of pints, yes. Very much, and be very responsible. I'll still be home at the normal time I would be from work anyway. It's like an afternoon, an early dinner, and a couple of pints is basically what it is.
Is that you trying to justify some day drinking as a responsible activity?
Look, Lee, I don't have to justify day drinking. The reason we're recording this a day later than we were planning to is because this time yesterday I was already back and in bed after being in the pub for the day. At my work Christmas party, the wider work Christmas party.
Now, if it makes you feel any better, I polished off like maybe half a bottle of Jack Daniels last night. So,
oh hell yeah! I'm going to my last thing is going to a Christmas movie tomorrow, and I was really disappointed in the group. Like, they pick it, not me, which, you know, I guess fair enough, because it's their trip, not mine. But I'm frequently disappointed in the choices they make. Like, a couple of years ago, we went to Home Alone 2 specifically. Like, Home Alone 1 was also on, but they wanted to see Home Alone 2 Lost in New York.
Boy.
I don't know. It's a good movie. Do you know what I mean? Like, but, like, Home Alone is the Home Alone you want to see. Mm-hmm. Although, like, there's a growing contingent within my work of young people now who the Home Alone they grew up on repeat was Home Alone 3, and I'm not having that bullshit. I'm not.
That can't be real.
Not for 1 second. I was just like, I keep saying to them, is like, it's not a good movie. They're like, how do you know? And I was like, because the cinemas don't re-show it at Christmas because they know better.
Yeah.
Like, the other one, the one we're going to tomorrow now is the Jim Carrey Grinch, which is, look, I'm not saying it's bad.
That's fine for a Christmas movie.
It's not making the fave 5 if I'm choosing.
No.
And I'm not one of those people who, like, look, if your choice of Christmas movie is Die Hard, I'm not going to begrudge it. Die Hard's a fucking great movie. I don't class it as a Christmas movie personally. I'm not getting into that. That's very hot dog is a hot dog a burger or a sandwich type debate. There's no real right answer to it. I've always come down more on the side of it's a great movie set at Christmas rather than it's a Christmas movie. It's not about Christmas.
Well, I mean, the first 2 Die Hard movies are movies set at Christmas.
Yeah. Now, yeah, it'd be my group's move to go see Die Hard 2 instead of Die Hard 1, probably, if I gave them the choice.
It's not a great choice.
Yeah, I would have chosen Muppets as the, like, family.
Of course,
friendly
yeah, you would have.
Christmas.
Yeah,
Muppets. But I am going to see one of my like, under the, like, it's kind of, it is more of that great movie set at Christmas, but Christmas is more of a prevailing theme in it than Die Hard. Next week, myself and Emma are going to go see Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. The Shane Black movie with Robert Downey Jr. and Val Kilmer in it, which is set all around Christmas, and there is Christmas stuff in it as well. But it is one of my favorite non-traditional Christmas movies to watch. So I will get in the spirit by this time next week. I'm really stalling trying to talk about this show very much.
If it makes you feel any better, like, my wife is a very big fan of Christmas, and she is doing her best to push the Christmas movies onto our almost 3-year-old.
Already.
And she's not having any of it.
I guess this is the first Christmas where she'll have some sort of nebulous memories.
Oh, yeah.
Because like last year she would have been just too young.
Yeah,
she probably had did she have a little bit of a clue that something was going on last year, but not
probably. But no, this year
I like probably, but I'm not into that shit. That's the wife. That's the wife. Poor long suffering Jen.
But this year she's very much aware of what's going on and is, looking at magazines and stuff and saying, "Yo, ho ho, we'll bring that to her." And she understands the concept this year. So, but when it comes to movies, like, she wasn't having any of the animated Grinch. Hasn't taken a liking to any of the. I'm trying to think what other movies have we put on?
Animated Grinch isn't great.
I mean, it's
wait,
fun.
are you talking new animated Grinch or old animated?
No,
Grinch?
the old one.
Old. I like the old one.
Yeah.
New animated Grinch, Benedict Cumberbatch Grinch, not good.
Yeah. There was another one she put on recently, and it was just like the Grace was just like, no, not having it. Screamed for Bluey, and Bluey went back on.
Muppets is a tough one at that age because, like, kids that age will get super into Muppets, but also at that age, I think The Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come is one of the scariest fucking things I'd ever seen in my life at age 3 or 4.
Not Michael Caine.
Like, not Michael Caine. No. He did very much look like the grim spectre of death, like the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come.
He did, that's true.
I had a real, like, as a kid, I had a real thing with being spooked very easily. And then, like, just something broke it, and now I love horror movies, but you would not have predicted that looking at me at, like, ages 3 through 7 or 8. I don't get into the Christmas spooks. There are a bunch that keep getting recommended to me by people, like Krampus and stuff like that, but I've never really. I like to sit in a cozy Christmas movie.
Have you seen Dwayne Bott's new Christmas movie?
No. Oh Jesus, no. Ugh, no. The most, like, so bad it's good Christmas movie I watch every year is Jingle All the Way. Because that's class. That's just great. It's bad, but it's great.
Sinbad is fucking brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. One that's added to the rotation since last year that is a really cozy movie, I don't know if you saw it, is The Leftovers. It's the one where Paul Giamatti plays the grumpy teacher at a boarding school in the 70s. And it's like to deal with the one kid that gets left over in the school over Christmas. It's just like him, the lunch lady, and the kid, and the kind of adventures they get into. And it's just this kind of like cozy and slightly heartwarming Christmas movie that's very funny as well. And I think that's entered the rotation. It'll be coming back around this year. I really, really liked it. But fuck, we just get to this.
I mean, let's.
God, right. This is a big week. And do we want to set the context at the start?
Yes, before we get into the actual the show itself, I think it is important to set the stage of what had gone on in the week leading up to this show.
For the people who were just like giddy in anticipation for months of the days that we would finally get to the Vince Russo, Ed Ferrara booking regime, I have some urgent and horrifying news. Vince Russo has been fired by World Championship Wrestling.
We have made it through the first stage of Vince Russo booking.
Yes. So I'd like to say to people who haven't gone through what follows, they're going to think, oh, they'll get a breather for a couple of months. No, because the TV does not improve.
Oh no, no.
It in fact continues degrading to the point where the only idea they have a couple of months from now is, I know who'll save us, Vince Russo and Eric Bischoff.
Yeah.
But yes, so I suppose to make a long story short, and on the next Thunder, as is tradition, we will crack open the Observer, which will have more details on what happened this week. But essentially, At some stage in the week or so leading up to the pay-per-view, Vince Russo got a phone call, 2 phone calls on the same day from Bret Hart and Jeff Jarrett, both of whom had been hurt. Bret Hart rather famously at Starrcade.
Allegedly.
Jeff Jarrett. Yes. You're going full tinfoil hat on the Bret concussion, yes. I think the side we come down, like the initial injury definitely happens at Starrcade.
Yes.
And it's, depending on who you ask, Bret Hart or sensible people, the degree to which he made it worse by continuing to wrestle, I think, was it 7 times in the following 2 weeks. Yeah. Anyway, we'll park that for now. We don't need to get back to that for like the 4th show in a row. But both of them are hurt. That's the material fact that Vince Russo is told, which forces Vince and Ed to get into a room and think about what they're going to do next. And you know, you chime on the thing often a bit. Like, Vince Russo has like 5 or 6 ideas, and all of them are ones he took from the WWF and tried to make work again.
Yes.
You know, we had China, now we have Asia, for example. You know, now to be fair, that had started before Vince Russo got there, so he can't take all the credit / blame for that one. But the idea of WCW, I guess the idea of WCW in general, just going, well, it works for them, it must work for us, is a thing that it kind of chills me now, Lee, looking at AEW the last 18 months, because the things that finally started, and I don't think by any stretch of the imagination, again, I always batter people for saying AEW is WCW. Because you need to have lived through this and watch it like we're watching it now to understand how far apart those 2 things are. However, 2 trends in booking that are prevalent in both. The 2 common threads are, okay, we need to make a play for their fans, and it worked for them, so it must work for us. A fundamental, you know, as our overlord Joe Lanza often says, a fundamental misreading of what brought people to the company in the first place. WCW got hot because WWF was stale and people wanted something that wasn't the WWF. AEW got hot because WWE at the time was the worst it had been ever in our lifetimes since 1995 is probably the closest comp, but at least like in 1995 you go, well, they have Bret and Shawn, whereas there was far less redeeming qualities to WWE in like 2018-19 through the early pandemic, even for the sickos that still kept watching. And to abandon your mission statement in favor of, okay, now we're losing again. You know, there was a while where, obviously, we have the famous run where Nitro was beating Raw, and then in an AEW versus WWE context, there was never that period where Dynamite was beating Raw. But there was a 6 to 8 month period where they were getting awful close. Yeah. They were getting awful close, and like end of 2022, start of 2023 is where, for reasons that remain beyond my understanding, they thought this was all fun, but do you know what we need to do? WWF stuff. Not even, you know, as has been pointed out, they're not even doing the stuff WWF is doing now. They're doing the stuff WWF was doing and abandoned 4 or 5 years ago. So not even the reason they're hot right now. It's not like they're... And I don't want them to do it. But it's not even like they're trying to do their own bloodline.
No.
Like, they're trying to do stuff from before that fucking died on its arse, you know?
It's the one thing Rich and Joe keep saying, and it's because it was said, and it drives me fucking mad, that's just how wrestling is now.
Yeah.
And
unfortunately... I guess that would have been a true statement until 2019. Because in an American sense, WWE was wrestling until 2019. I think my addendum to that was, the accurate sentence is that's just how wrestling is true, but the end of that sentence should be, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah. But unfortunately, when somebody in the room says that to every suggestion, It's that, and when you hire exclusively from companies that have failed, like TNA and fucking late teens
hire the
WWE.
people, hire the people that were fired before they got hot. Now look, we're not going to get into an AEW bash around here necessarily. Everybody else is doing that at the moment, and I do appreciate some of the minor resets. And again, like as the lads often say, like there's nothing they can really do to light it on fire right now. They just need to start putting pieces on the board for when things start to pick up again. And I think some of that is going well. It's not necessarily a thing that you might expect now that Russo is gone. We're going to see a complete resetting of the board, and your result of the main event tonight might make you think that it's a full resetting of the board. But really what ultimately ends up happening over the next couple of months is you have a very slight, I think, now correct me if you disagree with me, Lee, but I feel a tokenistic reset. And I feel it's the same as when Russo started, where Russo went in all guns blazing, is like, I'm going to give X, Y, and Z chances, and A, B, and C are out of here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I feel there's a little bit of that to kind of ingratiate the new regime before we park right back into fucking dumbass bullshit all day long.
Well, I mean, some argue, and again, we'll get to this in time, that this new booking committee that's now taken over from Russo, which consists of Kevin Sullivan, Terry Taylor, JJ Dillon, and who's the one I'm forgetting?
Did you say Ed Ferreira?
Ferreira's still there. Yeah, Ferreira's still there. So it's Ferreira, Sullivan, JJ, and Terry Taylor. So just as they're kind of settling on a formula for the show is when WCW bring back Bischoff and Russo.
Yeah.
And again, everything is thrown into flux, and then we get to the famous Reset Nitro, which again is all ahead of us. But yeah, like,
and is a great episode of television.
Oh, fucking it really is, like. But it's this thing of WCW are constantly chasing the instant. Like, they want that to be instantly hot, and that's not how it works.
Yeah. It's the Russo thing that people talk about, and you see it in Death of WCW a lot. They talk about Russo and a lot of people around this time in WCW, their priority was what makes a headline now rather than what builds the future.
Yeah.
You know?
Instead of saying, this is where we're going to be 9 months from now, they were looking at where are we going to be in the headlines tomorrow morning.
How can we shock them now rather than pick our end destination and work backwards? But to rewind a little bit, we were halfway through, like I was talking about how their whole thing was like, let's ape what WWF are doing, right? And their idea for this January pay-per-view was, instead of Brett defending the title against Sid, was to do a Rumble. Which
we should say their idea being Russo and Ferreira.
Yes.
Before they were forward.
Yes.
This was their contingency plan.
They came up with, they locked themselves in a room, as I started saying, and they said, right, a Rumble where right up until the end it would appear that Sid Vicious is going to win. And then Tank Abbott would score exactly one punch and win the Rumble and become the WCW World Champion. What would have been an all-time unconscionable decision, a decision so bad that Russo was just went, do you know what, buddy? Just go. That's it. You're done. And I think much as we've enjoyed some of those little Tank Abbott segments, it's like, that is one of those, it will be out of nowhere in the worst possible way booking choices.
The guy that has been feuding with Jerry Flynn in the Block matches.
The Block, yeah.
The Block is now, this was Russo's big idea, was to put the world title on him.
Yeah. I presumably, again, it's a USA Today headline type thing. Shoot fighter wins fake world title. You know? I wouldn't, like, again, is there a little bit of, there's the Rumble part where they're just doing what WWF would do. But do you think there's a little bit in the back of his head where he's remembering times where the committee, which remind me at the time in WWF when he would have left, was like Vince, Cornette, Jim Ross, Vince Russo.
Cornette was probably gone by mid-98. So it was probably was just Bruce.
Well, he was still around because he did the commentary stint for the pilot of SmackDown in '99. So he was
but he might not have still been on the committee.
Maybe not. Yeah,
because I think wasn't there at one point where him and Russo, well, Cornette says he wanted to get physical with Russo at one point, and that was kind of enough.
Just at one point.
Well, but I'd imagine it was mostly Russo, Ross, and Pritchard.
Yeah. There was flirtations periodically over 98, 99 with going and running with Ken Shamrock. Mm-hmm. Right? And I suspect that Vince Russo took the wrong details from that enthusiasm. That he thought, okay, Vince, who is commanding the number one company in the world, it's hot, it's on fire. He wanted to make a shoot fighter the world champion. So at one point, maybe it could work for me because that would be something that's a WWF idea, but I did first.
Yeah.
Forgetting the fact that Ken Shamrock, firstly, 1,000 times more charismatic in the physical sense. You know what I mean? He just like radiated shoot fighter energy rather than like drunken bar fighter energy. Ken Shamrock looked like $1 million. Ken Shamrock was a pay-per-view draw in UFC. So a much bigger star than Tank Abbott translating. And also, I'm not saying Ken Shamrock was Kurt Angle, but he was in comparison wrestling ability wise to Tank Abbott.
Also,
like I've seen Ken Shamrock have some very good fun matches.
Yes, Ken Shamrock was, for his, like, in his era, was a good worker.
And also, Ken Shamrock was fucking over.
Yes.
You know?
And people forget, Ken Shamrock was a worker before he was a fighter.
Yes. Ken
Shamrock, worked matches before he fought in any legitimate shoe fight companies. But, it stinks of Russo, like you say, just taking the totally wrong message from what he had been around. And, it's like, okay, you've lost your world champion. Shit, like, But, like, let's not pretend they had built Sid and Brett as this massive match.
No.
Like, it was an afterthought on TV.
Yeah, that in itself felt like it wasn't their plan A.
No.
You know what I mean? And either it wasn't their plan A, and we've correctly assessed that, or they're so bad at building a match that it was their plan A, and they just did an unbelievably shit job of building it.
Well, I'm going to say that, Bill Goldberg putting his fucking forearm through a glass window and nearly fucking killing himself might have altered the plan slightly.
It might have ever so slightly, yes. But look, it's a fucking dreadful week, and it's one that in between the TV tapings at the start of the week and the pay-per-view, significant portions of this show had to be rewritten. And it's not one of those shows where, you find out afterwards. Like, remember there was that one, I had to draw a comparison, the one AEW pay-per-view where, like, there was the first Forbidden Door,
yes,
but there was another one where, like, 3 or 4 people got hurt in the pay-per-view cycle, and they had to... You didn't find out till afterwards just the amount of people that had originally been booked for the show.
Was that enough?
Watching the pay-per-view,
I think that was that one of the All-Outs, maybe?
Could have been. It's like you watched it and you thought, that was just another banger pay-per-view. And then afterwards you were like, like they really had to figure that one out on the fly. No, this is the other kind where it's a pay-per-view that transparently looks like something that was written on the back of a napkin about 6 hours previously based on who could fly out to Cincinnati in time to make call.
Now, can I give our new committee a little bit of credit?
You can try.
Look, I'm going to attempt it. So they lost Benoit and they lost Jarrett, and obviously Jarrett and Benoit was going to be the backbone of this show with the three matches on the show.
Yes.
I think the
triple threat theater.
Yes.
Please have some respect.
I think they did a good job replacing Benoit Jarrett with the matches they chose to replace in the triple threat theater, as it were.
Yes.
I think picking Kidman to work 3 times on the show in place of Benoit and Jarrett is probably the best they could do considering the roster they had available.
Yeah, because you have, like, obviously Eddie is hurt and about to go. Ray is hurt. Like, your go-to who could wrestle 3 matches on no notice list is very short at this time. Do you know what I mean? Like, could you imagine the nightmare of going, right, Sid, you're wrestling 3 times?
But it's also not the fact of just somebody that could wrestle 3 times. It's also somebody that could wrestle 3 pay-per-view caliber matches and be over with a crowd.
Yeah.
And, like, you know, not fucking sully a pay-per-view. And look, I'll give them credit. I think Kidman was the best choice, and, you know, that's the guy they went with. And I'll talk about the main event when we get to the main event, but I think
yes, a long time from now.
Let's jump into the show, I think.
Yeah, so this is Sold Out 2000 from Cincinnati, Ohio. Oh mio, oh mio. 16th of January 2000. Scoring, Lee, thank God you're sitting down, 115,000 buys. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Indeed. I think we'll wait to get into the trend lines the next time there's a sub 150 because it's about to bomb much harder. So we'll wait for that. But we get a pay-per-view cold open because they need to alert us straight away. Hey, Brett and Jeff are hurt. We're changing some things up. They're also crediting... I don't know for real exactly the nature of Jeff's injury. I didn't read. Maybe we'll get it in the Observer. But what they're saying on air anyway is that Benoit's headbutt off the cage during the week is the reason he has concussion. Wouldn't be surprised by it. Wouldn't be shocked as well if, like, well, that's a great excuse as well. Do you know what I mean? It's a perfect thing to go, yeah, like that's believable.
If I remember correctly, I think it was when Snucket jumped off the cage and landed on Jarrett, he did some damage.
They want to give the run off to Benoit, not like the old dude who just fucked it. Yeah, okay, that sounds very, very plausible as well. And look, good wrestling psychology to go, okay, let's give the run off to Benoit in this case. So they're letting us know that K-Dog was taken out on the WCW pre-game show, meaning that now Triple Threat Theater is going to be Kidman by himself versus each member of the Revolution. And like you said, I think in terms of a pitch hitter, like to come in and wrestle 3 times and also have a little bit of storyline logic, you have that storyline that's been going all month. Well, longer than a month, to be fair, of the Revolution and the Filthy Animals trying to take each other out. And now you have Kidman left alone standing against all of them. Now, you can argue by the end of the night how it makes the Revolution look, but we will also get to that. Again, very rare they do this on WCW programming, but they do show match graphics as they're talking about this. They're fucking dreadful.
Oh, yeah, they're bad.
They're so fucking hokey, so low rent that they would make Gabe Sapolsky graphics from the early 2000s look high-tech. So consider that. Crowbar and Gormless Idiot David Flair were attacked. They attacked Vampiro backstage as well. And it just sounds like the pre-game show was an hour of people attacking each other backstage.
Yep. Just totally setting the stage for shit that they had to book on the fly.
Indeed. So, our opening match, also very famous, and we will get to why in a matter of seconds, I imagine. It is the start of the Triple Threat Theater as Dean Malenko, accompanied by Shane Douglas, takes on Kidman in what is billed by Wikipedia as a catch-as-catch-can match. I wrote, because like this may shock you as somebody who loves himself a bit of this period of WCW. I've never watched this match in full, but by fucking God do I know the finish of this match.
Yeah, this is it's pretty infamous. Here's the thing, like there's nothing to the match. Like it's all about the finish. Yeah. Do you think Malenko purposely did what he did?
So this has been a subject of discussion for now a quarter century,
yes,
nearly, because we are coming up on the 25th anniversary of this match happening, which scares me. I genuinely think it was a case of, because this was the thing I was going to say by the catch as catch can. So it was mentioned at some point in the build that there was a catch as catch can match, but by the time we get to this match, it is also billed as the dungeon match, right? And that's what Cage Match has it as, the dungeon match.
Okay.
Right? I think there was genuine, he had no idea there was a fucking stip. But as soon as he realised what had happened, he just didn't fucking care. Because we know what happens next. And I think it was just like,
well,
fuck this.
It had already happened, so they were already pissed.
Yeah. So it's like, was it 2 minutes or less?
Oh yeah, easily.
They're wrestling, and you're like, look, it's Dean Malenko versus Billy Kidman. This is probably going to be good if it gets going. Sadly, what happens is Dean rolls out to the floor. This is the thing we're talking about. Dean rolls out to the floor. The stipulation of the dungeon / catch as catch can match, which I don't believe was announced to the crowd in the building or to us at home.
Oh no, they definitely mention it on commentary. It's a catch as catch can match, and you cannot leave the ring.
Okay, so they didn't mention it to the crowd though.
I don't think so,
because the crowd are massively fucking confused.
Mm-hmm.
He touches the floor, and the ref rings the bell. Ref calls it as a shoot, rings the bell. Now, I will say, in defense of the referee, I know some people go with the refs should call it as a shoot, shouldn't call it as a shoot, and just roll with it kind of thing. This, to me, was an impossible situation for the ref, because if you don't call it like a shoot, what is the kayfabe excuse for him literally just rolling out and walking around on the floor and not calling the match? You know, it would have been an all-timer even by WCW standards to have just, like, again, like you said, if the commentary explained this as the match was starting and then within 2 minutes the one rule is broken and the ref is just like, yeah, whatever. That couldn't happen. So I don't blame the ref. I obviously don't blame Kidman. And I personally don't lean towards blaming Malenko because, like, again, I think this match changed its title 2 different times. I wouldn't be surprised if Dean either didn't find out or was so pissed off with all the changes to the card that the salient details escaped him in the moment. I don't think it was a deliberate attempt to sabotage the match.
I think it was just instinct. I don't think there was any... I think it was just whatever happened. I don't know if it was an arm drag or a drop kick. Something happened. Yeah. And I think it was just instinct for him to roll out and, you know, do the whole collect himself thing. And, and then just there was about, I want to say, 15 to 20 seconds of utter confusion, and then the bell rings.
Yeah. Look, it's an all-timer dumb finish. Like, it's legendary. Because this also is the end of Dean Malenko in WCW.
Yes.
This is his last appearance. Because we talked about how there might be people that are absolutely delighted at the end of Russo. But let me tell you a group of people that were deeply unhappy about Kevin Sullivan becoming the booker. Those men would go on very soon to be known as the Radicals.
Well, it wasn't only them, because it was them and their extended friend group. So there was Malenko, Saturn, Guerrero, and Benoit, obviously.
Yes. And then, now, I need you to think of the talent level of the ones that they went, all right, you can go. And then listen to the next people that Lee mentions and try to understand for yourself why those were the ones that they went, no.
So we have No Knees Mysterio.
Yes.
Conan.
And he's the one that, like, even though he's on the shelf, if I'm WCW, I'm like, no, you're not
going anywhere, kid. Conan. Shane Douglas.
Yeah.
And, oh God, there was another one. There was somebody else that asked out with them. Oh, I'm blanking on. There was a fourth one.
Let me look.
But there was somebody else that was in that extended group and did not get the release. But yes, so the story goes that either the night before the pay-per-view.
Yeah. This, by the way, is my second favorite. Like, my favorite of all time is still the Raven calling Bischoff's bluff.
Oh yeah,
you know that in '99 is still my fucking favorite. The Brian Pillman one is probably so this is probably my third favorite.
Yeah.
The Brian Pillman working Bischoff into sending a shoot release so he could get out of the fucking company. That's number 2. And then there's this, but I'm looking.
So the story goes that either the night before the pay-per-view in the hotel bar or the day of the pay-per-view backstage, Mike Graham was chatting with some members of this grouping, and he was saying, you know, if I was Kevin Sullivan and a guy in the company stole my wife and started sleeping with my wife, I wouldn't be putting the world title on him. I'd be slicing his fucking throat.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Dave, this might surprise you, but these men suddenly felt very unsafe in this working environment.
Yeah.
And went and approached WCW management, not the booking committee, actual real life management in the organisation, and said, we aren't working for this guy. So it's us or him. And, you know, in classic WCW fashion, they chose the old guys with the booking power. And tonight would be the last night we would see Dean Malenko, Chris Benoit, Perry Saturn, and Eddie Guerrero. Well, obviously we don't see Eddie tonight, but so just an absolutely fucking insane story. And like, you want to talk about moments that really changed the business. Mike Graham not being able to keep his fucking dumbass opinions to himself really doesn't get talked about enough.
So they ultimately would, I'm trying to find the other names, but they did, according to Dave, offer the releases to Douglas and Conan, who didn't take it because WWF weren't interested.
Yeah, so there was, yeah.
So there was like the Ray and whoever, that there is that one other person I can't think of. There was Ray and that person who were just told outright no.
Was it who?
There was Conan and Douglas who were offered releases and didn't find biters. Seemingly, Douglas tried to go through Steve Austin to see if there was interest, and Austin said there might be, and then Douglas's lawyer was the one who was like, no, it's not happening. Stay where you are, love.
Mm-hmm. Was it Hoovy? Was Hoovy the other one?
That's what I'm trying to find out. The other thing about it as well is that to this day, Conan tries to work it that he stayed out of Solidarity. And not that just no one was interested.
It's not that he'd worked in WWF before and they went, no thanks.
Yeah, I can't see it here.
But yeah, so that's the backstory to Malenko potentially sabotaging his match on the pay-per-view.
Mm-hmm. It's like, I think it is one of those, there are certain times where we say a lot about how it's an accumulation of things that led to WCW's fall and irreversible decline.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple of moments where you're like, this was one of the bigger gunshot wounds. And this is definitely one of them, because I can only imagine how the locker room already was towards the end of the Russo regime, how it was throughout all of 99. And then to lose all these guys who are... it was Hoovy.
The fucking spine of the company.
Yeah. They went directly to Bill Bush, all of them. And it is the spine of the company, like a good few of the remaining workhorses in the company. Mm-hmm. Like, you basically are left with, you've gutted that center where there are a lot of young guys that are up and coming, there are a lot of the old guys who are still there. And now you've lost a lot of the good glue in the middle who would be good at heating up your top guys and good at basically training your new guys on the road in one go. And all of them quite well liked by a lot of people backstage. You know what I mean? So even on top of like the material value they have to the company as wrestlers, I think just seeing those guys go has got to have been a gut punch to morale. And it's also got to have been, well, if they're going to split, I'm going to start looking and I'm going to start like kicking my feet back.
And it's really a case of now is when the toxic backstage atmosphere really becomes an issue. Like it,
because it's always been there, like since the lads came over, like since the NWO started, like the kind of the politics and the bullshit, as Vince Russo would say, has been strong. But yeah, I think this is where it basically reaches critical mass for the remainder of WCW, where it is just fucking out of control. Yeah. There are repeated weak-ass attempts, I think, to try and reset the culture over the next, 12 to 16 months, but they all ultimately fail. This was, I think, the last chance to claw back anything was to not have this exodus happen. But it has. We get in to sidle back into the pay-per-view. We flash back to Vamp and Crowbar having their match on Thunder. We get a gormless video package. And then a Vampiro interview with Hudson, which was clearly on the WCW Saturday night set. And this was on a show that just had one of the most bizarre dumb finishes of all time. This interview ends with the single most bizarre thing that happens all night. Because Vampiro is just having a very standard interview, and there is a run-in by fucking Chono.
Yeah, why is Masa Chono there?
Yeah, why is Masa Chono there? He announces that he is in fact Chono.
Yes.
And then he doesn't really interact with Vampiro or Hudson, just pimps off. And they're like, oh, I guess Chono's on the card tonight. No, he's not. Never seen again on this show.
Yeah, just there because he's there. It's just totally random.
You would think, Lee, that on a show that you had to hastily reassemble in probably 4 days, that if you had Chono in the area willing to do this, you wouldn't go, Chono, did you bring your fucking gear? Can we get you out there for 10 minutes? Because we're fucking hemorrhaging here.
I mean, you could have booked Chono against somebody on the cards.
So somebody, yeah. I don't really care who, but like Chono's over. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it would have been something a bit different for this show.
Like, just take fucking Crowbar out of the match with Vampiro and just do Crowbar Chono.
Yeah. Or get them to finally team together, because the crowds have been wanting Chobar. The dream tag team. 86 the square, the Gormless square there. Chobar is the way to go. How much better would the Daphne kind of like obsession storyline would have been if she just fancied Chono?
I mean, who didn't fancy Chono?
I mean, let's be fair. And then you follow that through and it's like Chono marries Stacy Keibler. Chono is revealed to be Ric Flair's son.
I was just going to say, then the second part of that storyline wouldn't really work.
No, it'd work way better.
I suppose, I mean, Flair did many tours to Japan, so yeah.
Yes. Oh, God. Give us the book. Give us the book. Anyway, sadly, we didn't get Chobar.
No, we didn't.
But we did get a triple threat match, allegedly, of Gormless Idiot David Flair. The Gormless one. Versus Crowbar versus Vampiro.
I do love when World Tag Team Champions both come out without their titles.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Real importance.
I do love, I can't remember who it was on commentary. I think it was Tony says, that sign says David Flair is my idol. And then Brain said, yes, but that man has no pants on. Brain is very much phoning it in by this stage, but still once or twice a show he'll get you with something like that. Vamp at the start makes light work of the loony geeks. David rolls out wisely to leave the people who know how to wrestle. David comes in, gets stripped to the waist and chopped to bits. The one thing, I try very hard, if there is a thing, to say, all right, fair enough, David. I do try to find it. And I will say, compared to his initial run, where, you know, the Horsemen were cheating to help David Flair win all his matches and become US champion, he has gotten in marginally better shape, and he has gotten more tan. He's not quite as lily white as he was when he started. Like, he was full farmer's tan when he started wrestling.
That's the best you can say about him?
That is the best I can say about him. Because God knows he hasn't picked up a lick of wrestling.
I mean, I thought you were going to say God knows he hasn't picked up a steroid, but... No, he hasn't. And you would think that it would be easy to, like, fall onto one. Oh, back in that locker room. Fucking hell.
Yeah. That, like, if you ask for a paracetamol, you get a fucking Soma or something back then. Anyway, the pummeling of David Flair gives Crowbar a chance to jump Vampiro from behind. Some double teaming stuff before old crazy David attacks Crowbar and Max on Daphne in the middle of the ring. Vamp sees this as an opportunity to vamp up. He corners and goozles Daff. David tries to save her, accidentally corner charges him, turns around into a nail in the coffin, and Vampiro wins. This was a whole lot of nothing, and it was one of those, like, I felt like it was just shat out in terms of, like, the build for it, because if you're going to do the thing, I hate in wrestling. I'm not going to go full, we've invoked him already, but I'm going to go full Lanza and go, I hate all triple threats, right? I hate most triple threats, but a particular trope in triple threats I hate is when there's like a 2-on-1 advantage and it may as well be a handicap match. Because it's never, you think of it conceptually and you go, ha, like this will make for really clever heat. But it never really pans out that way because
handicap matches are shit. That's why.
Yeah. And the way people are trained to, the WWF house style of doing the triple threat matches where somebody's constantly outside. So it's just, because of that, if you have the two heels in this case versus babyface Vamp, which is weird thinking about babyface Vamp, but if you have that, what you really have is two parallel singles matches happening for the most part with interference. And both of them sucked. Like, again, the crowbar Vamp dynamic was a little better. It wasn't great. It was like okay, fine to okay in that kind of thing. But, like, you would just settle into the rhythm of that for 30 seconds and then David Flair would come back in and fuck it up. So you ended up getting annoyed that you can't have the match where Vamp squashes David Flair. You're also not getting the match where Crowbar and Vamp have a competitive wrestling match. You're getting the worst of both. And then the babyface wins, but you're just like, okay.
He beat the two crazy geeks, yeah. He didn't beat anybody.
Again... Yeah, like, it's not like he beat two main eventers. I'm not advocating that it should have been two main eventers wrestling Vamp or anything like that, but it's not like, if you do that, especially at the, like, it's less than 10 minutes, and the way they put the match together, and the way the match starts with a prolonged period of Vamp easily swatting the two of them away, by the end of the match, you're just like, okay, like, he won the match, but functionally, like, who did he beat? Like, what has this done to... I'm not saying every match has to be this, but when you get to a pay-per-view, there should certainly be a sense of, okay, well, like, the winner has momentum. You can kind of see that they're being pushed up the card or being pushed towards a certain storyline. And even the same for the heels, that, like, they lose and it's like, oh, what's next for them or something like that. But I just feel like this was a match that may as well have happened on Thunder. It did not serve to me as a significant story beat of any description.
I think it was... I mean, you said it kind of there. It was a story that they rushed to get on the pay-per-view because it was just a way to get these three people on the pay-per-view. And that's all the thought was, is let's get these three in a match. That's it.
Yeah, because even with the injuries, this is still a 12-match card. That did not fucking have to be. Now, I'm not going to the side of, like, I do think less is better in terms of matches on a pay-per-view. But that comes with caveats, because usually now, like, WWE pay-per-views are like 5 matches and at least 4 of them are dog shit or boring. So it's not always less is better, but I think when you've got 12, less is definitely better.
Yes.
You know, these feel exhausting and pointless, a lot of the matches on this show. Do you know what this feels like? It feels like this and the next match, to a certain extent, they feel like buffers between the things that the bookers care about.
But, I mean, WCW since the early 90s have always done this with their pay-per-views, where they have, like, they would just have unannounced matches on the pay-per-views early on in the cards. It would just be, here's Van Hammer versus Tom Zenk. And that's something that WCW have done throughout many, many regimes. I don't necessarily have a problem with that when you are going to deliver something like Sting versus Vader, say, later on in the card, or Rick Rude versus Ric Flair, or, you know, whatever it may have been later on in the show. That's fine. You can have unadvertised kind of opener matches.
Yeah.
But when your tag team champs are involved in it, I don't know, I'd expect a little bit better. And, like, I know, look, David Flair is never going to be fucking anything great, and we know he doesn't go on to be anything great. But you can do better by your titles than just, here's a filler fucking a match we built in the space of a week and get these guys on pay-per-view to take a loss.
Yeah. Well, look, we'll move on for now. We've buried that sufficiently deep, I think. The Mamalukes are with Gene. They want to insist that no one is tougher than them. They're going to break the Harris brothers' thumbs, and with Disco at their backs, they've got nothing to worry about. And very much, you know, master of subtle acting Disco is conveying that he's reluctant to have those backs. At least he knows he's a coward, even if these two don't.
To be fair, I did like the bit where Vito's like, we're going to break their thumbs, Gene. He's like, Disco, what else are we going to do? And he's like, I don't know, wrestle them?
Yeah, that's a good line. I will give him that. Like, even a blind squirrel.
He's like just kind of very confused with the whole situation. He's like, I don't know.
Yeah. This leads to a tag team match. This is the Mamalukes versus the Harris brothers. Now, it's weird to say. We'll get the good stuff out of the way. Vito's pretty cool.
I thought this match was good.
So Vito is green. But he has a lot of energy and a lot of snap to his stuff. Like, he understands enough that, like, the card placement, he knows that this needs to be intense, it needs to be physical. This isn't your patient limb work type of proceeding. You know what I mean? So I think he understands this match better than anybody in it. Now, to be fair, he is in with one green partner and 2 fucking enormous anchors of terrible wrestlers. So I can't put this at the feet of him. And it is scandalous that this goes nearly up to the 10-minute mark.
See, you're much more down on this match than I am. I thought this was a well-worked match.
Just there is so nothing about the Harris brothers. They are so fucking slow. As soon as they have the heat, I thought this fell apart.
I wouldn't say it fell apart. I don't think it was. Like, don't get me wrong, the Harris Boys brothers, whatever you want to call them, like, they weren't the focus of the match for me. I thought Vito and Johnny the Bull were like the stars of the show here. Like you say, Vito has that energy and, like, he's just jumping off the screen. And I think Johnny the Bull is, like, a really good bumper. I thought he did a great job selling for the Harris Boys. Like, even though the offense wasn't, fucking anything special, I thought Johnny the Bull did more than his fair share, like attempting to get these guys over.
Yeah, for his level, I think he did okay. I do, like, again, I will go back on that. I think Vito was the star of the match here. I think the crowd struggled with Tony because they have a weird energy for me. They're cheering for Tony to fight back, but anytime he gets a hope spot, they're not going crazy for him either. I don't think they know him well enough yet. Like, I think Vito in the comeback spot is a better fit because I think he's getting over quicker than Tony. I also think it's weird, and it's
Johnny?
not their fault. Or Johnny, sorry. Not Tony. Why do I keep saying Tony? Oh, because Tony Malenko.
Yeah,
That's why. So Johnny, right? The crowd has a weird energy. And I think part of it is not down to them. It's that, like, literally 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks ago, the Harris brothers re-debuted as baby faces.
Yeah.
Remember, they were anti-authority baby faces. And now they're clearly big bully heels. But also they never had a turn in front of the crowd, really.
Well, I thought they were anti-authority baby faces just for that one segment.
This is WCW, you tell me.
Yeah. Again, I tend not to think too much about what the Harrises are doing.
Yeah, take us through this finish.
The Harrises beat down on Johnny the Bull for a number of minutes. Couple of hope spots, but Vito is like constantly drawing your eye because he's so energetic on the apron, wanting to get in here. So he eventually gets the hot tag. He kind of cleans house for a bit, and Disco gets involved when Vito goes up to the top. There's like all four in the ring. Vito goes up top, and Disco shoves him off, but he shoves him into a clothesline on Harris A, who's going for a powerbomb on Johnny the Bull, I want to say. And Vito gets the pin from this accidental clothesline. And Disco is very confused and not sure how to react. And Vito, is praising Disco for helping them win, basically.
Yeah.
It's a good story. Like, it's a good comedic story for me. It's like the reluctant fucking manager / lackey role is perfect for Disco. Because
I'm entirely willing to say that my own hatred of his face is affecting my enjoyment.
But I'm also happy to see that we don't have to watch Disco wrestle on the pay-per-view.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there is that. I prefer him in that manager role.
And I definitely think they have something here with the Mamelukes.
Yeah, and again, like, it's early days. We know that Vito as a single is the way they go eventually. But they do get, like, I do have distinct memories from the time of them getting...
They get a semi-serious shove at one point.
Yeah. Before they make the decision to go with Vito. So, like, they are going to be around, and we're going to see them develop pretty much in real time. I was trying to look up there. I wanted to go with their ratings so far for the show.
Yes.
Dave's ratings. Unsurprisingly, the opener had gotten minus a star. 2 minutes 36 seconds long. And did not end the way that was anticipated. The three-way match got 1.25 star. He did not rate. It wasn't even a dud rating. He did not rate this match.
That's incredibly harsh for me.
Yeah. I don't think it did not rate. Like, and I don't think it's a dud either. I just don't think it was, like, good. Yeah, it was there.
Fair enough. All right, next match.
Yeah. Oh, God. Oh, where to fucking start?
Well, it's a double title match. That's where we should start.
It is a double title match, thanks to you, brother. This is a WCW World Cruiserweight title match and Martial Arts Division title match. Medusa versus Oklahoma. God, I just
want this feud to be over.
So much so. Now, Oklahoma comes out, and obviously he's going to run down women as a concept. He calls them, and I quote, Ms. Magazine reading, Gloria Steinem worshipping, Sarah McLachlan listening, Ally McBeal taping Cincinnati Housewives. Now, the Ally McBeal taping did make me giggle a little bit. Because the Sarah McLachlan, Gloria Steinem thing, to throw at women or feminists is, that's hack. Do you know what I mean? Especially nowadays, I could see that coming miles away. He calls the men that support the women, he calls them, I believe, panty waist, utter suckling mama's boys, which is traumatizing. He grotesquely refers to Medusa's, shall we say, enhancements, and tells her to bounce them back to the kitchen. She comes out in a Bengals jersey to get the crowd pop, and Pie faces Oklahoma. Lays in the kicks, he does a flare flop, 2 count. He snapmares her 3 times, right, after this pinfall, and is immediately blown up by that, having to take a knee 3 times. She chops him, whips him, splashes, headbutt to the balls. She does do a very awkward middle rope drop kick, and then a middle rope seated drop kick. Goes to do a running drop kick off the whip. He holds the ropes to avoid it. Does a spinning neck breaker on her. Drags her to the apron. Goes to grab the sauce bottle. Spice takes it. Asia sneaks up behind him and attacks him for a big pop. Rolls him into the ring. Medusa taunts, but she gets rolled up with him grabbing the skirt. She immediately lays him out after and dumps him out of the ring. So there is a bit of vengeance afterwards as they hold him, and he gets barbecue sauce on the titties this time.
Yes.
And then bails, which is a horrifying sight. But Lee, would you like to make the official pronouncement, seeing as you did this?
I did it. I mean, you can't blame me for this.
You picked the match.
I did. Yes, our winner and new martial arts division champion.
Yeah.
Oklahoma.
God have mercy on us all.
This title is going places.
It's going some places. This was rated a dud in the Observer, obviously. It was an anti-match. Done to make people suffer. Hated it. Hated the whole thing, apart from, the little giggle I got with Ally McBeal, and what a fucking waste of space Oklahoma is. That 3 snapmares, and he looked like he'd just jumped into a swimming pool. He was sucking air, wet with sweat. Just a fucking... I will say one thing, in terms of, central casting, you couldn't have picked a more perfect slob of a man to play the I Hate Women wrestler role. And it's an interesting pivot for them to try and take him from just Jim Ross the wrestler into I Hate Women.
Into Andy Kaufman.
Yeah, but also a very Russo-esque way. Is when in doubt, he hates women.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Gene with Knobs. He says he wants to thank Finlay for taking him under his wing and giving him the eye of the tiger again. So it's Finlay we have to blame for Knobs being pushed on TV. He says he's going to beat everyone tonight and then Finlay. WCW Hardcore title Fatal 4-Way match. Brian Knobs defending against Fit Finlay, Meng, and Norman Smiley.
When personal finance connects you to both your funds and the stuff that matters, that's money. And that's Cash App. Know what else is money?
Using Cash App to request that $50 your cousin owes you.
Actually, finally, getting that $50.
Easily divvying up those pizza and wing checks before your boys have a chance to slip out.
Tipping the delivery guy when you're flat out of cash.
Hearing an awesome musician on the train home and tipping their cash tag.
Sending everyone in your family group chat $1 just because.
Splitting the cost of tickets to that really expensive sporting event you were afraid you were going to have to foot the bill for.
Watching your paycheck grow without you lifting a finger.
collecting all that money for your fantasy football winnings.
Or at least easily shelling out that money for your fantasy football dues.
Getting paid to read a wonderful ad script from my good friends at Cash App.
Sending, spending, saving, splitting, tipping, donating, gifting, or just typing numbers, all with the #1 finance app in the App Store. That's money. That's Cash App.
Download Cash App from the App Store or Google Play Store today to create your own cash tag.
On the way out, one of the commentators says, guys, I think it's tonight. Guys, Brian Knobbs is really coming into his own. To which I wrote, fuck off.
Why in 2000, I was going to say 1999. Why in the year 2000 are we trying to make Brian Knobbs a thing?
Because Hulk is coming back soon. Tony, I'd say, worked the hardest he has in about 2 months trying to link Finlay turning on Knobbs to the junkyard near fatality. He tries to connect the dots that him ultimately turning on his protege was because he nearly died in the junkyard and Knobbs was part of that whole fucking mess. Now, I would be attacking the entire creative team of World Championship Wrestling if I was Finlay, who for coming up with the idea of let's risk people's actual lives in a shoot junkyard.
In an actual junkyard, yeah.
Finlay and Knobbs are still in matching fatigues and working together, even though they've been trying to tell us they've split up now. This match is a fucking mess.
That's awful. Like, this
is fucking... This is the worst... Again, you talk about, like, Russo taking lessons and not learning the right thing. Like, he took garbage brawls and brought none of the intensity, none of the logic of any garbage brawl he'd ever seen.
And what's funny is one of the best garbage brawlers in the world is on this roster, La Parka.
Yeah, true. But, like, I don't think it would matter. I think you could get, like, you name the person that could do crowd brawling or garbage brawling at this time. I don't think it was... It's kind of my argument with the WWE thing, whereas, like, there is a lot of wrestlers they have signed that are some of the best wrestlers in the world, but I don't think it's possible for them to have the top-tier match I want them to have within their speciality in the confines of WWE. And I think that's the same in WCW. I think at this stage, and with, I know Russo's gone this week, but with the kind of like how booking had been across 1999, not even just in the Russo era, and what they saw these garbage rolls to be, I don't think it was possible to have a compelling one. Now, look, Terry Funk is going to try his best a couple of times during his stint, but Terry just does what Terry's going to do, regardless of what the booking committee are feeling at that one time, which I respect the hell out of. God bless Terry.
Or regardless of what Horse is going to do to him. But it's just this WCW hardcore title has, I mean, it's not been good. It's other than Norman getting over, and it's not because he's hardcore champ that he's gotten over. Norman was getting over with the Wiggle pre-hardcore title run. And I can't think of anything else. Like, the Bam Bam Hack feud was pretty bad. Like, the matches weren't good. What came after that for the hardcore title? Then it was straight into Norman, wasn't it? Yeah, the junkyard and all that kind of stuff, and the post junkyard, it's just been mostly Norman, but it's not been an addition to the show. It's been mostly bad.
But this is one thing I'll say, right? Can you think of a single instance of a well-booked hardcore championship division? Because the only like fond memory I have of a hardcore championship is as a comedy title during the 24/7 rule in WWF. But that wasn't like, I'm going to tune in to excellent garbage brawl. That was, I'm going to tune in to see people get sneak attacked in a ball pit.
Yeah. I was going to suggest the DDT Iron Man heavyweight 24/7 whatever fucking title, that, you know, the one that's been won by a broom and an iPhone. And
I genuinely think, like, so they're trying to do, like, anytime someone's tried to do a hardcore title thing, it's trying to do you're going to see some shit here that you can't get in a heavyweight division, can't get in a tag division. It's going to be completely different. You're going to see something spectacular that'll blow your mind. I don't think we fully arrive at a matured version of that till the X division in TNA. I think like they're trying to do, this is the memorable title with clips and imagery that people are going to remember. And it just ends up being like either comedy or disregarded or on people who can't work. Whereas X Division was like, what if our version of hardcore is really fucking class matches?
It's the WCW Cruiserweight division, yeah.
Yeah.
It also doesn't help that every main event on American TV and pay-per-view post 1998 has been in some form a brawl or gimmick match or, you know, somebody going through tables, whatever. So having a hardcore division in and of itself is kind of a moot point.
Yes, I think so. I fully agree. Where are we here? Everyone is just spilling up the ramp as... Oh, Tony, by the way, on my enemies list, places Ireland within the British Empire. That won't be forgotten, sir. Norman gets crotched on the rail and chased into the crowd by Finlay. Heenan, with a very hard to detect level of sarcasm, calling this the best hardcore match he'd ever seen.
Probably because this is the one he stayed awake for.
This is his new bit. I feel like this is the third time in a couple of months where he's called something that's like bang average the best thing he's ever seen. This, I don't think, even rose to bang average, to be honest. That would be very charitable. But I think he's done the ultimate, crossed the ultimate line of commentary in terms of restoring your in terms of maintaining your credibility, which is he started to call things that the dog on the street knows are bad good.
Yeah,
I think the trust is gone with Brain.
Instead of doing the Jim Ross of bowling shoe ugly being his code for we know this isn't good, Brain is just doing this sarcastic, this is amazing, isn't it amazing?
Yeah. Meng nearly gets a sneaky pin on the lying dead on the ground Knobs. Finlay has to run in and break it. Norman sneaks in to attack Knobs, headbutts him low, goes up top with the nightstick, but Knobs clears him out and wins. I did like the post-match gag of Norman trying to hug Meng, and Meng just hoofs Norman out of the ring. And then I kind of am left with the question, the booking is so weird around the Finlay and Knobs dynamic that I'm like, did they retcon the Finlay turn, or have they just been bad at doing the storytelling that they didn't really turn on each other? This was the final lesson. Because I think both are possible, given the week they've had.
I think, if again, I'm going into my memory bank of 25 years ago. I think the way they pass it off is this was the final lesson.
Okay. Yeah. It's one of those things where, like, I don't need commentary to hit things over the head all the time, but I feel like this was one where they could have...
Well, I mean, I doubt they understood what the story was here, so...
Oh, yeah, well, this is, again, the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. Inexplicably, this got a star and 3/4.
Very fucking
which
generous.
Is, I would say a star too generous, for sure. We go straight into our next match, part of Triple Threat Theatre. This is the Bunkhouse Brawl. Jesus, the amount of fucking Bunkhouse Brawls they seem to be having lately. You would be forgiven for thinking there was a Bunkhouse Brawl champion rather than a hardcore champion at this stage. This is Perry Saturn versus Billy Kidman. All Saturn for a minute of this match, and then Kidman gets a burst of energy for a 10 punch. Corner rebound clothesline for 2. He attempts an acid drop, gets hung on the ropes and knocked outside. Action pretty good in this match, I thought, for the most part. And it's the first match that has a discernible story. I think even this terrible booking committee have been reined into having to tell a story in this match. This is his second match of the night, and Saturn is wearing him down. Saturn's goal isn't to win, it's to leave him
dead
in a state where he can't compete later. He's like, if I win, I win, but the main thing is to destroy Billy Kidman.
This match, for however long it was Saturn doing as many cool things and hurting Kidman as much as he could. And I'm pretty sure he accomplished that, because there was a couple of really good near falls and stuff. Like, Saturn does like an awesome standing sidekick. I thought it looked fucking great.
Yeah. He does a great standing sidekick. He did his fucking beautiful elbow drop. I was talking to, when I was on the Link to the Gas Game of the Year retreat, I was talking to the lads, Barry Murphy, Jack and Mark, about how I think, and we've always maintained on this show, that Perry Saturn has one of the great unheralded elbow drops in the history of wrestling.
Absolutely.
And I maintain my vindication having watched this match. This was a great elbow attempt once again. Goes for a moonsault, misses. Kidman rallies, hits the old sky high for 2. Perry hits belly-to-belly suplexes. This was a great spot. Does the belly-to-belly suplex over the ropes outside the ring through a table that I completely forgot
I
about.
had the same, yeah.
That is the art of the table spot. Set up the table. Wrestle for long enough that we forget about the table, and then you get the pop when the table spot happens.
Yes.
Don't give him it straight away. Instant gratification is never the way in wrestling. You build to it, you earn it, and they did, even though it was only a couple of minutes.
But Dave, have you thought that maybe the fans are going to chant, "We want tables, we want tables"?
One of the fucking worst fucking tropes in wrestling crowds. Fuck you. Like, that at this point annoys me more than the What ever did, because at least the What wasn't trying to direct people towards like specific spots. Anyway. By the way, the first angle, they should not have shown a replay of this from any other angle. The first angle of this looked like Kidman fucking died.
Yeah, because it looks like he smacks his head off the apron.
Yeah. Subsequent angles show that he tucked just on time and like maybe got a glance on the way past, but not enough where you're worried about him. Whereas the first one looks like, he took a full header and then went through a table. Drags a limp Kidman back in and signals for the end. Goes for the elbow again. Kidman gets up, punches desperately at Saturn, backdrops Saturn off the top, and hits the do not powerbomb Kidman for 3. This was, to this point, and if memory serves, would remain my favourite match on the show.
It's probably my second favourite. I thought this was damn good. It was.
Actually, to be fair, there is a match later that actually shocked me as to how good it was. So, fair as
I'm going to assume that was the Tank Abbott match you're talking about.
Obviously. I've been hyped all month for the cut. I know that's going to be 5 stars. This only got 2, which I thought.
No.
Especially considering the other ratings on the night. I thought we've been talking about him being too generous. This was too stingy.
Seeing as this is Saturn's last appearance, here's a question for you. Do you think WCW utilized Saturn to the best of his abilities?
No, not even close. I think the closest we ever got was the Raven feud, like his role in the Raven feud, and I think there was momentum there coming off the Fall Brawl 98 match to go somewhere with him. And I don't think either of us ever said Perry Saturn World Heavyweight Champion level. But he's someone that you should push into that secondary title holder role and see what happens. Do you know? I don't think he'd have made a jolt at the top of the card or anything like that, but you put him in that position to be the workhorse champion that is guaranteed a 3 to 4 star match on a pay-per-view regardless of who he wrestles in that division defending his title. And then if the dude gets over to flirt with a challenger of the month story arc with a heel champion, you fucking do it.
Here's where I always would have seen him. Do I think he's Chris Benoit and DDP that could have went up to the world title? No, I don't. Yeah. Do I think he's more valuable than a Buff Bagwell in the mid-card? Absolutely.
Yes. I think he's the dude who makes the dude.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's the guy who should be like not the final boss. Obviously, like if you're going up to the main event, the world champion is the final boss. But I think he's the guy that legitimizes somebody in their passage between mid card and main event. I think that's the role Saturn should play.
Remember that period where Tajiri and Rhino were like the upper mid cards guys on SmackDown in like 0304.
Yeah,
like Saturn could have been that, where he's just this workhorse guy that people can't get the better of. And he doesn't need to be a world title contender. I think his early 98 run in around the TV title was damn good. Obviously, we're on record as saying the story involving the dissolution of the Flock and the match with Raven at Fall Brawl is just one of the best things WCW did from beginning to end. Yeah. I think
and one of the most coherent things they ever did.
Ray or Saturn eventually coming to the aid of the guy he always maintained was his friend, not his boss. As the tag team had so many possibilities that unfortunately were cut short for one reason or another. And yeah, they just never did anything beyond the stuff with Raven. Like I know he was involved with the Revolution and stuff, but they just never seemed to know what they had with Saturn, and it's a damn shame.
Yeah, and he's a guy who, like, he was good enough as a killer heel wrestler that he'd get a babyface over, but also his stuff looked so good that as a babyface he worked in certain contexts as well. And again, like, neither of us are purporting that this guy is Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit levels. I think, like, there was potential for him. I think there's much higher potential in him than there ever was for Dean.
Yeah.
Of the Radicals, you know what I mean? Because he doesn't have, the two of them are the ones that don't have the charisma, like the physical charisma of Benoit, or just the general charisma of Eddie Guerrero. But I think his stuff, Malenko's was a style and a psychology that appealed to the you and me type fans, where I think Perry Saturn had that crossover that his stuff looked good to the nerds like us, but his stuff also looked good in a way that got over with crowds. Whereas I think Malenko struggled for long periods with
Malenko didn't have that big room energy, whereas Saturn could have both that small and big room energy, and could project himself and come across as a bigger deal. But yeah, it's like we mentioned already, losing that guy at this time. It's more damaging than they realized.
Yeah, now, but this is the other thing. Like you said, like they didn't realize what they had in him, so like he may as well have gone, because I don't think in the alternate universe where Perry Saturn specifically stays, that anything would have ever happened. I do believe, obviously we'll talk about what happens in the main event later, but I do believe with Benoit and Guerrero, I would believe that, not that they would genuinely support them with a long-term push, but I do believe, based on what happens across 2000 and what happens at the end of this show tonight, I think they would have at various points turned in desperation to both Benoit and Eddie Guerrero at the top of the card.
Yes, they look, come here, Benoit was never going lower than the upper mid card at this point. Like he was a made guy.
Because Lord knows they tried to de-emphasize him several times, and he was just too.
I mean, they tried in late '99 to de-emphasize him.
That's true. Yes.
But yeah, no, I do think, like you say, in that alternate universe, I think if Saturn had stuck around, I think things were so bad by the middle of 2000 that, as a guy that was always there and always, I won't say always consistent, but fairly consistent, he would have got somewhat of a push. I mean, look, the cat gets pushed as US champ at one point. So, I mean, Saturn, you would have to imagine, would have got a shot.
Yeah, Lord knows they probably would have turned to him before they turned to the cat. Even they would have, surely. Heenan, I wrote this note down, but I don't really remember. There's Heenan's trying to make a point that Tony won't let him talk, but he just trips over his words, and that's again, another sign of it was years before he got sick, but it's signs of Heenan is just not checked in anymore. Is that how often would you ever see Heenan flub a line or a burial before? You know, this is end game for him mentally in wrestling, which is sad. We'll ultimately get to it eventually when we do our like post WCW miniseries, but I'm very glad that he got the gimmick battle royal.
Yeah.
To show that he still had zingers in him, and it was WCW, not him.
It was the atmosphere around him that drained him, and I'm just.
And I know Monsoon dying as well had to have been.
It was rough
because obviously this happens a few months previous. Like I'd say that has to be one of the hammer blows as well. You know.
But speaking of hammer blows,
oh my God,
next.
This Stevie Ray segment, man. You want to talk about something that definitely had Vince Russo's hand in it and was filmed before this, and they're like, fuck, we might as well air it.
Stevie in the Hood.
Stevie in the Hood. Now, I will say, there is a fraction of a microbe of a kernel of an idea that I like about this.
Okay.
Is that if you don't make it extremely racially dodgy by referring to it as the Hood, right? I think the idea of having Stevie revisit their old stomping grounds and as the heel trying to insincerely frame it as it being Booker who forgot where he came from and not him, I think is a good little idea. But I think they got lost in we're trying to make it look like a Spike Lee movie. Because that was, even the camera style was like somebody in their first semester of film school trying to do a Spike Lee joint. And that to me was like, and look, I could be wrong. Somebody could come and go, oh no, this was completely Stevie Ray's idea and artistic vision and stuff like that. But you can't help but feel that Vince Russo went, take a camera and go to the Hood.
Well, Dave, didn't Ed Ferrara go on to teach film studies at Full Sail University? I could be wrong on this.
Well, I certainly hope every single person who was subjected to that kept a receipt and demanded it back, because holy shit.
I was somebody on the WCW booking committee went on to be like a film studies professor.
Now, speaking of feuds that we wish would end, but it turns out are just fucking beginning, Stevie Ray has a promo with Gene first to say that this is going to hurt him a lot more than it hurts Booker.
Yeah, career-wise, absolutely.
Don't hit a cliche in this company. Yes, for sure. This is Booker T with Midnight versus Stevie Ray. Booker coming out riposting to the video, saying it was Stevie who forgot where he came from and agrees that the two of them are through no matter what happens tonight. Booker wants to handle it by himself and sends Midnight away. This is now the last appearance tonight of Midnight.
Is it?
Yes.
Oh.
She, I believe I looked this up after our last Thunder. She wrestles on 2 more house shows, but this is her done in terms of us seeing her. I'm almost certain. It's hard to kind of sometimes parse when somebody doesn't wrestle, but they might still appear as a manager valet. So don't be surprised if maybe there is 1 or 2 more appearances. I know she is done with the company relatively soon. So if this is not the last, it is quite close to the end. And that resembles my memory of it in that I remember very vividly this awful feud that is about to follow, and I don't remember her having anywhere near a significant role in it. I remember, sadly, the other 3 people who have a significant role in it. Booker is a house of fire. Stevie bails after eating a Harlem sidekick. Won't let him rest, though, as Booker chases around the ring and throws him back in. Stevie bursts out of the corner with a clothesline that looked pretty decent. Back elbow off a whip. Long, interminable heat segment. I'll tell you what, Randy Orton, when he was in OVW, was watching his Stevie Ray tapes, because fuck me, one Stephen Ray did enjoy himself a chinlock, sir. This was his idea of just, take a rest.
Well, I think that was more out of necessity than, say, a Randy Orton chinlock, which was done for heat.
Yeah. Yes, second only to Oklahoma in terms of fucking sucking air a couple of minutes into a match was Stevie Ray during this. Booker, clearly by crowd response, is the biggest individual star on the show so far. But you do, and this is like, maybe it feels like I'm trying to overanalyze the crowd, but did you get the sense of, we love you, Booker, we really wish you weren't here on this card? We wish you were doing something else. We don't care about this. We care about you.
Well, I mean, I've been of the opinion that they've had those thoughts around Booker T since January 1998.
2 years ago. Yeah.
So
yeah. I wrote, Booker is the biggest star on this pay-per-view, so obviously you have Ahmed Johnson come out.
that is Big T, sir.
Yes. The former Ahmed Johnson, now to be known as Big T, comes out to attack him for a DQ. Stevie nearly botches his own finish. Then Midnight comes out to meekly try to help, but the heels keep her at bay.
I love that. Stevie nearly botches his own finish on his own brother.
Yes. Like, they definitely rival the Hardys for least chemistry of two biological brothers wrestling. And sadly, this would not be the last time we would see them wrestle. No. Big T calls Midnight a piece of fish. There you are. They announced they are the new and improved Harlem Heat and Bale, soon to be known as Harlem Heat 2000.
Yes.
And if you were wondering, hey, Booker T has a T in it, and Big T also has a T in it, I wonder if... Yes, they will. Yes, they will.
Oh, God.
I remember the first time I felt embarrassed to be a wrestling fan. I was the one WCW fan in my group of friends in school. And I could get my friends David and Laura, I could get them to watch episodes of Nitro. So we'd be over in their house a couple nights a week because my mom and their mom were friends. And if wrestling was on one of the channels, we'd watch it. So if it was on, I could get them to watch Nitro, and they really enjoyed some of the guys I enjoyed at the time, the Kidmans, the Bookers, etc. One of the first times I ever remember being embarrassed about wrestling was David talking to me one day in the yard in school and asking me what was happening in that other company we watched sometimes. And I said 2 men were fighting over the right to the letter T. And he looked at me, even at the age of, what age would I have been? 11 at that stage. And he looked, it was the first time I had seen another child with a look of pity. You know. Like, he was about to turn around to me and with the voice of a man twice his age go, son, you don't have to put yourself through this. The tales I will have of me watching this in 2000, there's a lot of fucking cope going on. There's a lot of, like, me watching this as an 11-year-old in 2000 up until, like, I think it's the autumn of 2000 where it gets yanked off Cartoon Network over here in Europe. And I watched it up until then every week, Nitro and Thunder. And there is an awful lot of me that year that is akin to the Homer when the pig goes flying. Like, it's got some dirt on it. It's still good. It's still good. Mm-hmm. Me really trying to convince myself. Because, you know, at that age, you never want to watch less wrestling.
Oh, yeah. Well...
So you're really like... I'm still watching Metal and Shotgun every week on Sky One at this stage of my life.
Seen the same match twice, yeah.
Yeah, I've said it before on the show, but I think for a good half of my wrestling fandom, I think the wrestlers I saw wrestle the most were Midian and Viscera. Because they would get one, if not, like... 2 matches between Metal and Shotgun. Gangrel also very high.
And Jesus, if you watched Heat, well, then you're getting them again.
Now at least I'll tell you, D'Lo Brown was pretty high as well. So that's less.
Well, you might say he was sky high. So,
indeed. Yeah, I watched a lot of S.A. Rios in 2000 as well. Speaking of Heat, like when that started airing on Channel 4 over here. But yeah, this is one of the feuds that just like, oh man, it really is the end. Because I'm like, this fucking, oh man. I'm so sorry in advance for the people that are watching these shows along with us that you're going to have to put up with the Harlem Heat 2000 stuff.
And that's before you get into what becomes of the man named Booker T and what
or the man named Stevie Ray.
What Booker has to go through in the year 2000.
Yeah. Because you think to yourself, you might look at the title history and go, oh man, they finally strapped the rocket to Booker T. Nay, I say. Remember that whole thing about, we were talking earlier about, in desperation, they just turn to whoever's standing near them, and it's a shame that Guerrero was gone by then. Unfortunately, one of the people they turn around going, fuck, let's put it on this guy, was Booker.
Do you know what I just realised, and I haven't thought about until now, is we are only 5 months away from Bash at the Beach 2000.
Yeah. I thought, similarly, I was thinking of Bash at the Beach, and I was like, are you going to say that Bash at the Beach might be our first 2-part pay-per-view episode?
Who knows?
Yeah. It feels like that is either a 2-part show or a 4-hour podcast. It's eventful.
Really?
Yeah, I know. Shocker. Anyway, I also want to do 4 hours on War Games 2000 by itself.
Yeah, well, that's for totally different reasons.
Yeah, next up, Sid is with Gene. He says, this situation proves that Brett and the NWO have done everything possible to tarnish the title. And I'm like, oh, Sid, it's not just them that have done everything possible to tarnish the title. It's a real group effort for World Championship Wrestling. Next up, we have Tank Abbott versus Jerry Flynn. Now, look. I've done a lot of talk this week in work about my kind of like icebreaker question for groups has been, what's your most cancelable food take? What's your most cancelable movie take? The thing that you stand on an island and will fight to the death over that you know is wrong. Right? The crowd hates this match. I kind of thought it ruled a bit.
Dave.
Man, I think I've got Stockholm syndrome.
Look,
it's a minute long. Like that, we should say that.
Yeah,
start,
look,
right?
it's not long. It's not bad.
Yeah,
but I would class it as good.
Do you know who I think will have my back on this? Is Aaron Quinn.
I mean, probably because, Jerry Flynn is in it, but
this is look. I'm not gonna preach, right? I was like, if the Brawl for All was this, it wouldn't have sucked as much. If it was just a minute of shoot fighting, and then someone gets knocked out or tapped.
I mean, yeah, maybe.
The thing I think that turns the crowd against it mostly, apart from the fact that these are two guys that, in Jerry Flynn's case, is not and has never been over, and in Tank Abbott's case, they have no idea what the fuck to make of this guy yet. Mm-hmm. There's some ground a pound. Jerry attempts an armbar. He gets powerbombed out of it, Rampage Jackson style. The one thing that I think is really funny, and it is a common trope of wrestling, is the people in professional wrestling who do the worst worked punches are the people who do shoot punches in their main job. Now, I do think, I think it's like the last punch, maybe. One of the last 2 or 3 punches he throws actually looks good, but I think that's because he actually just caught him.
I think it's if I remember correctly, I think it's the last one. Yeah, that he actually. I don't think he connect fully, but he catches him.
Another thing that didn't help the presentation of this match was Tenay was in the middle of saying that this match ends on a 10 count while the ref calls the bell after a 3 count. Mm-hmm. But for a minute and a half, I was like, this is, if you said, how would you book Tank Abbott versus Jerry Flynn? This is, without exception, how I would have booked it.
Oh, yeah. The problem...
It's a minute long. He beats the shit out of him and moves on.
The problem wasn't the fact that how it was laid out. The problem was that it was actually booked for the pay-per-view.
Yeah. True. Yeah. This is maybe a spark out finish to get people talking Nitro match. We then have a Not Banging My Wife recap. Where, when you put all those clips together... I mentioned cope earlier. DDP is on the biggest amount of copium you've ever seen, where it's like the only person he seems to be convincing that Buff Bagwell is not banging his wife is in fact himself.
I don't know. This storyline seems to have happened so many times that the only person not banging his wife is in fact DDP.
Yeah, they love to do Kimberly's banging someone's storylines.
And they don't end with this one.
No, they certainly don't. Hey, Lee, I love the intensity of this match, and we'll talk about the actual nuts and bolts of the match in a minute. But I sure would love to never see a match go outside straight away again. WCW's one of their tropes, apart from attacking people while they still have their ring jackets on and backstage brawls during interviews, is their extremely well-worn trope of start the clock when the bell rings. Within a minute, one or both participants will be outside the ring wrestling.
It's pretty exhausting because, like you said, it's every single time. And yeah, I'm with you. I thought there was a decent bit of intensity to the match.
Yeah.
But it's also one of those matches where I just don't care about the results because what reason do fans have for caring about this?
Yeah. I think this is pretty well worked. I think this is the best Buff Bagwell match I've seen in a long time. Now, granted, this was the way it was constructed with DDP out for blood and looking for holy vengeance. I think it's mostly on his shoulders. But I also like this is one of the times where DDP is aggressive, has the bit between his teeth, but it's not this lame ass, half-assed heel work he's been mostly stuck doing for the last year. I really liked this side of DDP in this match. And it is a low bar, but I think this was probably this was the most surprising match on the show for me, and I think this was the best constructed match in terms of making it. Even though I didn't like that they went out straight away, I think they should have built to that. I think the internal logic of why this would be a wild and crazy brawl all over the building makes perfect sense.
Do you know what? In its defense, I will say this is probably one of the more entertaining last man standing matches you'll ever see.
Yeah.
Like, I think...
Not that it's a high bar.
I think they make good use of the 10 counts. I did like that actual wrestling moves were getting, 8 and 9 counts. Yeah, like I said, it was a good match, and the fans, I think, by the end of it, were into it. It's one of those where the result kind of doesn't matter to me personally, and that's where I struggle with it.
I think DDP is one of the last guys in the company who, in spite of what they've done to them, the crowd are still willing to go along with him. Do you know what I mean? I think maybe him, Sting, and Goldberg are the last ones that and Booker to an extent, where you can sense a genuine emotional investment in the things they do.
Yeah, despite the nonsensical heel turn, the fans still consider Page as their guy. Like, he's the guy that they anointed. Like,
Yes.
Goldberg was Goldberg, but Page is the guy that they rose up and brought with them.
Yes, for sure. I thought this was a pretty damn enjoyable match. Trying to get towards the end of this match. So there was the Page getting elbow dropped through the internet location table. They come back to the ring. The crowd are super into it. Buff eventually goes for the blockbuster, pulls himself up. Page is up at 9. Buff pulls out a riot baton that he had this whole time in his boots and wails on Page, who just pulls himself up and hits, again, like one of our things we loved about the Page run is the diamond cutter out of nowhere. And I love the idea of a desperation cutter.
I thought it was great.
Because it's one of the finishes that makes sense that you could do it at desperation, because essentially all he has to do is grab Buff's head and fall down. You know what I mean? So it makes sense that he would have just enough to get that launch back in, and
it's a kill shot.
Yes, an established over many years kill shot. As like, it's one of those like weird because there's so few of them apart from the jackknife and the leg drop of doom. There are so few genuinely protected moves in this company. Like, you probably count on one hand our entire time covering this where there's a diamond cutter, an immediate pin, and someone kicks out. If even you get up to the full one hand on that one. Kimberly tries to run out, but Buff wins before she gets there. Paige gets some punches in after the bell. She looks embarrassed. She says, this is really weird. She says something to Paige and they both walk off, and then Paige shoves the camera.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, whatever. Do you kind of like you said, you struggled to get kind of invested in this. Where are you with, like, we've talked a lot about Paige. Where are you with Buff? Because I'm like long past the point of he's a total write off for me.
Yeah, I think that I just there was that moment in, wasn't it late 98? Maybe mid 98, where he got hurt again, and we thought they could have brought him back as a face, and there was reasoning there to bring him back as a face, and they didn't. They just kept him with Steiner and the NWO, and ever since then it's just been varying degrees of I don't give a fuck about this guy to, oh, the fans are into him here, but it's not really going anywhere. And even this DDP feud just came out of nowhere. And I can't deny that the fans were into this match. Like, the second half of this match, at least, I thought the fans were very much into it.
Yeah.
But I think that was more on DDP's end. And, like, Buff does get reactions, and we do hear, like, the female reaction that he gets every time he comes onto a show. It's undeniable. But for me, his work just isn't there. He has undoubtedly buckets of charisma. But that's not enough. And he's just a guy that I don't want to see in there with guys like Paige and Sting and, you know, Benoit. I don't want to see Buff mixing it up with these top guys.
No, yeah. They have successfully and look, you know, his body is clearly falling apart. But like you said, there were ways to work. Like, this whole business is constructed on, you know, Brian Alvarez once said, the art of professional wrestling is taking a big immobile stiff and making you think he's the best wrestler on earth. So there were obviously ways and smoke and mirrors that there was still something of value to Buff even post injuries, but yeah, I've really felt it since the last comeback that there's just nothing resembling being there for me anymore. I think the last time I genuinely enjoyed him was when he was Scott's sidekick and they were doing all that comedy stuff, but that was obviously not exactly a main event angle.
And then the whole Russo JOB thing and stuff, that obviously hasn't helped either.
No, God, that fucking cratered him for me. Because again, like, I hated it as somebody who understood all the lingo. But as has been remarked many times, Russo was booking for the internet, and those are not the people who were in these buildings ever.
People were lost.
Yeah. Right, we'll move on from that as we go to our next stage of Triple Threat Theatre. This is Kidman versus the mystery opponent. The cage comes down real quick because the cage is the final step. We're clearly running behind at this stage on the show, the speed at which they get this cage down. Douglas comes out saying this time they will not underestimate his mind. He maniacally reveals that the opponent is the wall. And we are supposed to react. This is my big problem with this. We are supposed to react like, oh my God, it's the wall. As if the wall hasn't been booked like absolute shit since the split from Berlin. Like, we were talking maybe one Thunder ago about how this guy is being booked so badly. Does he have heat on him? Because he made the split from Berlin, and you thought, oh my god, right, they've seen that the wall, like, not that, you know, Alex Wright is definitely a better wrestler, but in terms of, like, the Berlin gimmick was death, and they got the wall away from him, like, real quick, because they obviously saw something in the big fucking unit.
They think the wall could be a guy for them, which quite obviously is something they do think, but...
And look, he would get over eventually, but, like, this is, like, up till this point, like, between that point and this point, they've been just like, actually no.
Yeah, I mean, he does nothing but job. Like, I'm pretty sure he jobbed to Jerry Flynn on One Thunder, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, recently, to build Jerry Flynn up to lose to Tank Abbott. So Wall is beating on Kidman early. This match is death, by the way, in terms of, like, no one buys this as, like, the final boss of this. It was really fucking anticlimactic. Like, by comparison, it absolutely should have been Perry Saturn of the three of them. That should have been the last one. By the way, we should note that the new cage for WCW is here, which is just a smaller Hell in a Cell. Which I do think is one of those, like, it's partly a let's steal their cool looking cage, but I also think partly a petty thing to be like, well, our promotion is so dangerous that the thing that's their career shortener is just our standard cage. I think there's an element of that in there.
Yeah, I think they'd be giving them too much credit to think they thought that deeply about it.
Perhaps. The new Kidman is doing the underdog babyface thing, but no one buys that Wall is going to win this match. Wall has him up on top, fight off, sunset flip powerbomb for 2. Wall gets right back up, goes in the offense. Wall attempts a choke slam. Kidman jumps off into a Hurricane Rana, goes up top, and then I said no one was buying it, but to the shock of fucking everybody, the Wall grabs him, choke slams him, and wins.
Yeah, Kidman kind of just jumps into a choke slam, and
after having literally just done the bit where he avoided a choke slam, jumps immediately back into the move he just avoided. So it made him look dumb. It made the whole thing feel like an anticlimax.
Yeah, like I say, I think they did their best having Kidman work 3 matches, but having, like you said, the Wall as the final boss really took things down from where they could have went. I think there was better options to use there. I think even having just Douglas go in as the third guy and face a weakened Kidman would have been a decent climax to the story.
Our catch up on star ratings, by the way, I don't know if I gave the Stevie Ray Booker one, but that was a 1/4 star. The Jerry Flynn and Tank Abbott got 1 star. DDP and Buff gets the highest rating of the night with 3 1/4 stars. This cage match got 3/4 of 1 star. We now get a Funk and Nash video leading into Kevin Nash and Terry Funk
For the commissionership.
They meet. What a commissionership. This is a battle of who is less mobile. And it is embarrassing for Kevin Nash that this is a close contest, considering Terry Funk has multiple decades on him age-wise. This was not good.
No, it wasn't.
Run us through this one and try to protect Terry's legacy.
I don't have detailed notes. You take much more detailed notes on the matches than I do, but
I fuck all for this one because I just sat there going.
It was just a garbage brawl. I think there's an early jackknife through the announce desk is one of my notes.
Yeah,
and then Kevin Nash.
Funk hits a gusher.
Yeah, Kevin Nash decides to cut a mid-match promo. So there's the guy you can blame for modern WWE.
So Randy Orton's watching Stevie Ray and Roman Reigns is watching Kevin Nash.
There you go. That explains a lot. So Terry is, for whatever reason, now gushing after going back first through a table. Look, I love Terry, but that was illogical. Nash decides that he's going to tell Funk that if he can crawl back into the ring after the powerbomb, he will let him keep the commissioner's job. And of course, Nash, being the lying heel that he is, revokes that promise. Funk crawls back in. We get another fucking just Nash beating down on Funk. What's this now? Oh yeah, so Funk is doing his kind of rope-a-dope stuff, and he's kind of sitting between the ropes, and he just falls back onto the back of his head on the floor. Mm-hmm. And like totally unnecessary for Terry at this age to be doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
This was almost starting to feel like just an extended squash at this point. Like Funk was not competitive at all here. We get Funk making a bit of a comeback with a couple of chair shots, and there's some audible boos in the arena because people aren't buying now because of how the match has gone. People are no longer buying Funk as an equal to Nash.
Yeah.
So we get a pair of unprotected chair shots to Funk. Funk makes a chair bridge. So again, Kevin Steen had been watching his Terry Funk tapes.
Yeah, that's the one I'll absolutely believe. That Kevin Steen watches Terry Funk.
So obviously he makes the chair bridge with the 3 chairs. They continue fighting for about another 90 seconds, and then Nash powerbombs Terry through the chairs and gets the win. And Kevin Nash, at the stroke of midnight, becomes your new WCW commissioner.
Yep.
A title that we only just learned about on the previous Nitro existed. And it's already changed hands.
Yeah. I do. Maybe Heenan's last decent line on this was like, "Oh my God, Nash is the commissioner," and Heenan was like, "Yeah, but at least Funk is still alive."
I mean, yeah. Just a bad match. I thought they did a really poor job establishing Terry as a threat to Nash.
Yeah.
And at a time where they're fucking losing stars every fucking pay-per-view, they could have used somebody with the cachet of Terry, and they just didn't do him right here.
No. We have a post-match devastated Earn, who called Nash Kevin Man.
Apart from the flub, which again isn't common with Arn, I thought this was a damn good Arn promo. I thought he set the stage for the main event really fucking well.
Yeah, that's what I said. I wrote here, he put over the main event lads way better than any angle or selling in this entire pay-per-view cycle. God bless him. This leads us, as you said, into the match for the vacant WCW World Heavyweight title. And we are going to stick with you, as is tradition, in a Sid match. This is Chris Benoit versus Sid Vicious. And it starts off with the incredible return of your best friend and mine, Mr. Buffer.
Yes, Buffer's here for the main event. But before I get into the match itself,
are you going to talk about the best camera shot on this entire program?
No, what was that?
So there's a moment where Buffer is doing the introductions, and in the rare good artistic choice from WCW, they do an awesome crossfade of 2 shots between a Canadian flag and Benoit's unblinking stoic face. And I was like, that single shot felt big time in a way that this entire pay-per-view did not.
I see. This is going to be my thing, is from the Arn promo on right until the bell rings in this match, I thought this is the best job WCW have done since we've done this show of making a title match feel like a big fucking deal. I genuinely think they presented this match in a way unlike they've presented any other title match. And I'm so fucking mad that it's taken until Benoit's last night in the company for them to present him in this way.
When they've had to do it out of desperation.
It's just, when we talk in 2024, coming into 2025, of wanting an alternative to WWE, this is the kind of stuff that AEW, TNA, whoever the fuck, anyone else wants to be. This is what they need to be doing. I'm not saying they need to go out and get Michael Buffer to do intros, but everything about this presentation, about the way Arn, the guy that's, this special enforcer referee, speaks about this match and how important it is to the company. and the two guys that are going to compete for this title and what they mean to this company. It's just a presentation unlike anything they've done, and I'm so fucking angry that it's taken Bret Hart getting injured. Bret Hart, a guy that would fit this fucking mold to a T, that they've had in the company for 2 years and done fucking nothing with.
Yeah.
Jeff Jarrett getting injured. Again, a guy that your mileage may vary, but he would fit in that kind of, in that mold, that no nonsense, presented in the big way mold. I think Jeff could have been an asset.
Mm-hmm. No disagreements here.
They've had to shuffle the card, and they've ended up with these two guys that they never really wanted to go with. They never wanted to go with Sid. Sid was brought back into the company as a fucking heavy for Savage. And everyone else has fallen away, and Sid just kept getting it more and more over. Yeah. They never wanted to go with Sid. But here they are, and they're left with Sid and Benoit. And they go and they have a fucking... I won't say it's a great match, but for me and what I wanted out of this main event, I thought this was the perfect match that these two were capable of having.
Yeah.
And it's just, this is what WCW could have been. And instead they chose to, and we'll talk about it after the match, they cannot help themselves. Everything has to be NWO central.
Yeah.
Anyway, Buffer does the intros, bell rings, and almost instantaneously we see Perry Saturn and David Flair walk out onto the entranceway. Mm-hmm. And the two guys, and Aaron, I believe, stop in the ring and kind of point and go, "Are they with you?" And like accuse each other of having people with them. But that's not what happens. Instead, it's the locker room slowly and gradually comes out. And again, this helps this big time feel. And this feel of this is different. This is a momentous thing. This is what this WCW title should be about. And the locker room just come out and watch this match. And yeah, it's Sid. And it's not a 5-star classic. But I love that early, like the story of the matches here. Sid dominates early with the power. There's a couple of awesome spots where he picks up Benoit for a gorilla press slam, and he picks him up for a vertical suplex, and he just launches him face first into the mat. An awesome looking visual, and I loved Aaron's reaction to it as it happens.
Aaron selling things is always great. Like, just, you talk about a man who gets it. Mm-hmm. Like, there's very few that get it better than Aaron. And
like I talked about, this company never wanted to go with Sid, but it's the fans that got behind Sid. And as Sid is beating down Benoit, you hear chants of Sid, 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 Sid. Like, the fans are into this. And then we get Benoit going after the knee, and Benoit just relentless. Like Tony calls him the Wolverine. That was a WCW nickname, people, not a fucking WWF one. Yeah. And he just, for the rest of this match, he just keeps going back at the knee. He grounds Sid and brings him down to his level. And we get Benoit using some submissions. He uses the figure four. He uses the Muda lock. And it's just all about Benoit from here grinding down Sid. And Benoit trying then to get the kill shot. And Sid against Chris Benoit fighting from underneath is not what you would expect to work, but it works here. And even though neither guy is a heel, it works as a concept. And Benoit's trying for those Germans. He can't get it. And eventually he gets one. And after the first German, what happens? Oh, Sid kind of fights out and gets like a desperation power slam. But then we get another German, and Benoit goes for the headbutt, gets the headbutt. But we get the power kick out, and Bobby comes alive for that. I thought Heenan's reaction to the big power out kick out was fucking glorious. And from there, Sid just gets the choke slam. A one of the best chokeslams you will ever see. This, like, just the way he goes up and the way Benoit comes down on the back of his head. Fucking awesome bump. And of course, Benoit being as good as he was, he bumps and he rolls into the ropes. Just close enough to the ropes. And he gets the 1-2, and Aaron calls the break because his foot is under the rope. Not on the rope, and that's important. His foot is under the rope. And again, this is again something that WCW would never do. And they actually did it here on this night. The contingency planning. They booked a spot that was important, that played into the next night.
Perish the thought.
Like, it's... How much have we been... Like, we've been screaming for the last fucking 2 years of real time on this company. Like, for the last fucking 5 years of this podcast. They don't book logically. But here we are in the fucking main event that they booked on the fly for a title that they had to strip the champion of because he couldn't defend it. And they book one of the most logical spots they've ever done, where Benoit puts his foot under the rope, Aaron calls the break, and Benoit just gets the crossface on out of nowhere. Sid has his foot under the rope. Aaron is not a referee, doesn't see it. Sid almost insta taps, which again is something I love. I love that with certain submissions. There's no escaping. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Sid taps. We have a new champion. And I love that Sid makes sure you see that his foot is under the rope. Because as he's tapping, he's lifting his left leg and hitting off the rope. He is ensuring that you see that it should have been broken up. Mm-hmm. It's just... This is...
That I think can be easily misconstrued as a botch.
It wasn't, though.
But that's what I mean. Like, because it's Sid, I think people will be inclined to go, the fucking idiot, like, couldn't even.
But it just, you don't expect this level of thinking from anyone in WCW. And here you go, here's this committee just put together on the fly. And I just, it's so frustrating. So frustrating that on the night that Benoit finally gets his moment and that they finally book a title match to feel important, it's just all thrown together and it's almost purely accidental.
For sure. We have the follow-up to the match, which is, again, it makes it feel like that coronation feeling rather than a season finale for Benoit, where you get the post-match glow, the interview from Gene. He puts over Sid. Aaron comes to congratulate him. He says, no reflection on Sid. This was great. Nash threatens him that at midnight life becomes a living hell for him. And maybe the most prophetic words of this whole show, I will leave you with what Tony says as we sign off. I think we have found the future of WCW, the future of the world title. In the midst of all this celebration, there will be a train wreck, and that train wreck starts at midnight. And oh fucking boy, in so many ways is that true.
I would wonder what Tony was aware of.
Yeah. Because,
excuse me, we know Tony was a guy that loved his wrestlers. And we have to imagine that he was into Benoit and his journey to being world champion. And I'd wonder what he was aware of, and was he... excuse me, bad time to get a cough. Was he aware of the situation with the guys backstage and just how pissed off they were, and aware that Benoit wanted out? Because if he was, he totally set the stage for what was to come the next night. And if he wasn't, like you said, just...
It's freaky.
Yeah.
To finish off the star ratings on the show, by the way, I wanted to put these two together because I think you'll be appalled by this. And I think I understand why, knowing Dave as I do. He gave the semi-main, the Kevin Nash and Terry Funk match 2.5 stars because I think he couldn't bring himself to rate a Terry Funk match lower than that. And again, because of how people felt about Sid at the time, he gave the main event 2 3/4 stars. There is not one chance on this earth this match was only a 1/4 star better than the semi-main event.
What did you think of this match?
I really liked it. I think it was one of those, again, you know, we talk often about and we said earlier about the WWF boring and predictable. I think this was a very logical, very well constructed main event match that not only could potentially have anointed a new... Now, again, it's after the horses bolted. I don't think this is one of those inflection points that could have turned around WCW if he'd stayed. But I think this is the kind of anointing you should have been doing to people like him and like Booker T. I think it was excellent. I think, again, Sid... I will never try rewrite history and that say that Sid was a great bell-to-bell wrestler, but Sid was unbelievable at being Sid, and I think this is one of the more... Like, I think a lot of people, when they think about Sid whipping ass, like, they think of those, like, just monster Sid performances, like, where he's killing dudes, roughing dudes up, hoofing them around the place. I think in Sid's performance in this match, you see the selfless side of Sid, and I think that is the thing that people don't talk about as much. Sid's most pivotal role in his career was as the guy you brought in for a while to leave somebody he feuded with better than they started and then move on. And I think they've tried to do that with him a couple of times over with Goldberg and stuff like that, who I don't think needed that because Goldberg was already at that level and had been hobbled, you know. I think this was the most genuine instance of that, where had Benoit stayed, you would say there is a man thoroughly elevated from one point to a much higher point on the card. Based on, again, like you said, like this is something that was thrown together relatively last minute, but achieved something relatively remarkable for WCW at the time. I don't think it's not troubling near 4 stars. I think it's settled somewhere around 3 3.25 for me. But you can have a match like that can still tick all the boxes of what you want it to do at the same time, and I think it definitely does that in the ways you've already laid out. So I was really happy with it. It was really the rare... If I didn't know that the Radicals were just about to split and we were reviewing this show and I didn't know what was coming up ahead, I'd be really buzzed coming off this pay-per-view. But there is... again, it goes without saying the Benoit stuff from years later. It goes without saying that stuff. But in isolation, I think you would feel buoyed as a WCW fan on this night, not knowing any better and saying, fuck, this is fresh, this is new, this feels right.
A guy has been made here.
Yeah. In a way that, look, it's not fucking Goldberg beating Hogan clean in the Georgia Dome. It's not that level. But for where they're at the time, this was as much of an anointing. It's more of an anointing than you would think they were capable of at this point. Not as much. It's more of an anointing than you would think they were capable of. It is a little bit of a shame to not see the parallel universe where he stays and how they inevitably fuck it up. But for a night, for a moment, it was great
as
fun.
Kevin Nash points out, for an hour and 20 minutes, it was as good as it was going to get.
Yes. Lee, give me your overall takes on the show. Your winners and losers.
I'll start with my winners and losers. I think Sid and Benoit, definitely winners. Again, Sid had a good promo. Aaron obviously had the great promo before the main event, but Sid and Benoit, for just like I said, it wasn't a great match, but it was the perfect main event and the perfect match involving those two. I think Kidman came out at the show overall stronger than when he went in, and the Mamelukes, I think, again, like I said earlier, they definitely feel like they have something there with those two. Losers, fucking Booker and Stevie Ray, man, just totally dead in the fucking water. Terry Funk has been brought in, and within a week is just, again, DOA, fucking dead. And yeah, it's not good when you're bringing in a guy like Terry Funk, and within a week you've taken away all of his fucking cachet. Overall, I think it wasn't a thumbs up show, but definitely wasn't a thumbs down show. I think there was enough good compared to recent efforts that there's things there you would hope they would build on. Now we know they don't, but I can't call it a bad show. I can't call it a good show. It's very much a thumbs in the middle show for me.
Yeah, I'd agree broadly with all of that. The finish counter brought to you by Ludwig Borga. There's 12 matches on this show, 7 clean finishes, 2 disqualifications or countouts, 2 interference leading directly to a finish, and 1 via miscellaneous shenanigans. Thanks very much for listening to another episode of Days of Thunder. We shall talk to you behind the paywall in a week, over at Voices of Wrestling in 2 weeks. Until then, we'll see you very soon. Be safe. Bye-bye. Thanks everyone for listening to another episode of Days of Thunder. Days of Thunder was produced by Lee Malone and edited by me, Dave Ryan. To keep up to date with the show and find all the ways to listen to us, you can follow us on Twitter at WCW Thunderpod, or click the Linktree link in our Twitter bio or in the show notes. I am at the Day to Dave on Twitter, and Lee is at Malone_713. Days of Thunder is a part of the Voices of Wrestling podcast network. Follow the VOW network anywhere good podcasts are sold for more fine podcasts than you can shake a stick at. Thanks.
Hey kids, do you like wrestling? Well, we like wrestling too. We are Shake Them Ropes here on the Voices of Wrestling podcasting network. Myself and Chris Novembrino kind of doing a lazy river of wrestling criticism, going through the news and whatever happened in stateside television wrestling. And also, you know what? Sometimes we just like to watch old stuff and talk about that too. Love for you to give us a listen. If you haven't already, we are Shake Them Ropes here on the Voices of Wrestling podcasting network.